Okay guys, today we're going to start the SMT-10 Axial build. First thing we'll do is open up the instruction booklet. In this bag you get instructions, you get your antenna deal, some typical wrench, wheel wrench, and a couple of markers and some decals. This looks like it's the decals for the interior, steering wheel, tachometer, that kind of thing. Alright, so the book goes through with all of its safety stuff. More parts list, screws, hardware, and step one. Now, it says to open up plastic bag 1. This is plastic bag 3. This is bag, plastic bag 1. And inside of plastic bag 1, we got bag A, B, C. So plastic bag 1, the first thing we're going to do is build the rear differential, I guess. Front differential. Front something. It says front. That's all it says. Doesn't really tell you what you're building. It looks like a transfer case, but I don't even know. I have no idea. They give you a bottle of Loctite. We got the dog bone, axle shafts, dog bone, receiver cups, dog bone receiver cups, gears, all metal gears, grease, and blue Loctite. Use the Loctite when you're doing metal on metal. Don't use it when you're doing it on plastic. Loctite does not set up until pressure is put on it, causes it to activate. Alright, so first thing we have to do is get one of these gears. All metal, all the gears are metal, every single one of them. And we need some bearings. And we need some hardware, screws. If you're not sure which screw you're supposed to use, there's a little diagram on the side of the instructions. And you can hold the screw, everything up to it in its actual size. So we need the AX30392 gear, a bearing, which goes here, some screws. They are the A015s. Bigger screw, they're kind of tiny. So let's get started. We need one of these gaskets, rings, whatever you want to call them. We need the gear with the ring going inside the gear. It's slotted and everything else, so it only goes in one way. Screws here, and this differential housing here. So first thing, one of these gears goes on the inside of the housing, and then we have a shaft that, oh my goodness, here it is, pin that goes here. Put two gears on top of slide on the pin. Okay, the differential gears, there are two different sizes. They both have the same part number, which is quite interesting. Okay, so one of them has 13 teeth, the other one has 10 teeth. Okay, we're looking for the 10-tooth ones to go inside the differential housing. Gear cup, whatever you want to call it. They call it, they don't even have a name. Okay, so one goes down inside. Two of them on all right, so this is confusing. The 13-tooth gear goes on the inside. The 10-tooth gears go on the little axle pin. They go down inside here on the pin. And you grease those. I am not going to use the grease that comes with the Axial SMT-10. I like to use a thing called Udder Butter. Made by Cow RC. It's waterproof. And then it just works better. So this is the grease that I'll be using. It's kind of a red color. It's made specifically for RCs, and it is, like I said, waterproof. So if you hear a little noise outside, we got a thunderstorm moving through. Good old Louisiana. Sunshine, rain, you don't know what it's going to do. My grandkids live up in Wichita Falls, Texas. It's snowing up there. So, who knows what's going on with this crazy weather. Okay, so we got a little grease on the gears. Then the top gear is another one of the 13 teeth gears. Then we put on the bell differential gear, or let's say it's called the bevel gear. And then these tiny screws to hold the whole thing together. Now we will be building this SMT-10 stock, no aftermarket parts, no nothing. We're going to test it out just exactly the way Axial built it and send it to us. We'll see if it can stand up to what we're going to do with this truck. And then, of course, in the future, I'm sure we'll do some upgrades. But right now, we will go with everything stock. Of course, I didn't use their stock grease, but that's just me. Okay, so we now got the differential put together. Put a couple of bearings on it. Man, that's a tight fit. Okay, the next step is to put this gear on a shaft. Put a pin in it. And then put a C-clip on the end of it. Not my favorite thing to do. Okay, I'm going to turn the camera off now and do the other two. At this point, we're going to put together the front axle. Looks to me like the axles are exactly the same. Axle housings. So, the first thing we need to do is put in a couple of bearings. And then we slide the shaft, the output shaft, in there. Put some grease on there. course, when I didn't have any grease on my fingers, it went right in. Definitely a pain to line that up. All right. Put a little grease on the bevel gear. You don't want to overpack the back of these gears. They can cause you problems if you do. Alright, so the bevel gear goes toward the long end of the shaft. And then we need to lock these down. With some M3 10 millimeters. Nothing else. When you do these, after you get done with one of these, you'll have strong wrists, especially on your dominant hand. Okay. Spins pretty good. Seems to have a sticky spot in it. And it looks to me like I didn't get one of the screws turned in completely, and it's knocking on the gear. So tip, make sure that you got all the little screws down past the outside of the gear, or it will cause you a problem. Done the same thing on this one. I tightened down. I didn't tighten them down far enough. You're afraid to over tighten them, but you got to make sure that the gear is, or the screws are down inside the gear so they don't knock against the differential housing. Okay, the last thing I need to do is put on the cover. That'll only go on one way. And those screws are again back to those tiny screws. Scale screws. You wouldn't want big old screws hanging off your differential. Seems like an awful lot of turning of screws, and a lot of people use a little electric screwdrivers. I have an electric screwdriver, but I don't like using an electric screwdriver on these tiny screws. over tighten them, and then the next thing you know, you got a strip screw. And that's no fun. Because if you strip the housing, you got to buy a whole new housing. Just because you stripped a screw. Because you were in a hurry. And that's not what this is all about. Being in a hurry, it's just the fun of building them. My favorite part. I'm not so much into running them as I am building them. I mean, I love to drive them, don't get me wrong, but I love building RCs. All right. That's one shaft put together. I'll do the other one off camera. Okay, so we now got the axle housings put together, 2 of them. Now we're going to continue to build the front axle. And each one of the ends of the axle gets a small bearing. And then they call this the right side and a left side. So there's a right and a left. Knuckle. I have a hard time believing that there's a right and a left, but that's what it says. Okay, so this goes on. Basically, one side's longer than the other. And right now I'm going to line them up so they're right in the middle, and they're adjustable. Put these little screws in. One goes in the top, one goes in the bottom. You want to call it top and bottom. And again, this kind of you can adjust these. You have to take the screws all the way out. They're on splines, so you have, if you want to move them, you got to take out the screws, remove the knuckle, and put it back on in a different part of the spline. These are very easy to strip out. Like, I'm having trouble getting this one started. I think the biggest problem is the threads want to thread into the slot first. And when it does that, it wants to move from where you thought you started it from. Okay, once you have those on, take the long shaft with the dog bone, and then the short one of course goes on the short side. All right. Next, we get the rest of these knuckles, heads, some more bearings, small bearing on the outside, large bearing on the inside. And then we take these cups, this bearing does not want to fit correctly in this housing. There it goes. Now this bearing don't want to fit. Some tight tolerances on these bearings, that's for sure. Alrighty, once we do that, we have these little flanges, as they call them. Difficult to see. Go on top of here, or you can put them inside Okay, that's the front axle. Finished, feels smooth. Turn the page and finish the rear axle. Okay, on the rear axle, of course, we have the parts used for to hook the links to. Brackets for the links that need to go on here. Oh, we need to put these on the front axle also. Well, what I'm thinking about. But they do go on the front axles. And then we put this bracket on each side. Okay, these screws are tough to get started. They go in much better when you have the right wrench. I was turning them, but they weren't going because I had too small a wrench inside the screw. Alright, rear axles. Put the axle shafts in. And I put the bearings in a little too soon. Put the housing on, and you're ready to go. Pretty straightforward and simple. Okay, put this on the wrong side of the axle. It will fit on either side, but according to the drawing, it goes on the other side. Alright, the last thing we have to do, and I'm sure that a lot of people would go, what have I got these little bitty set screws left over for? They're actually drain plugs for the axle. There's 3 holes in the axle that are not used because of the way you put the brackets on. So you plug up all the little holes in the axle with drain plugs. Well, I would actually say, I guess you could call them drain plugs. Realistically, they are to keep the water from going in the axle. So basically, you're just plugging the holes where you don't connect brackets. But I only see 2 holes, and the picture shows 3, so I'm missing something. I'm not paying attention, I don't know what I'm talking about, something like that. So I'm also missing, oh, here we go, the long screw. Excuse me. I'll look this picture over and over again. There's a screw in the bottom, 2 screws in the bottom to plug the little holes. I don't know where the 3rd one goes. I can't see from the picture exactly what they're talking about. But these little bitty set screws go in the bottom of the axle, plug the holes. There's one here. There's one along the axle itself. Here, and then it says there's one in the differential somewhere, but I don't see it. Let me see if I can see it on the front axle where they show the picture. It shows a hole. I don't see it. I don't know what they're talking about. It's just one of those things. There's a hole in the bottom. A hole in the axle. And the picture keeps showing me another place to put them. It looks like right in the cover. But I don't see any hole in the cover. So we will have two little set screws left over. Alright guys, there's the axles. I hope you like this video. Tomorrow we will do the links. Alright guys, there's your axles for your SMT. Pretty beefy looking axles. Y'all have a good day. Thanks for watching.